On this episode of Locked On Angels, the Angels bring in longtime catcher Sal Fasano to be an assistant pitching coach. So why'd they do that? What does he add? And how is he going to fix the Angels' strike-throwing issues from last season? Let's talk about that today. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're here 5 days a week talking Angels baseball, Monday through Friday, every single weekday. Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, that's 5 days. 5 days a week, Mike. Let's go. And we're doing that until about mid-December. We're going to drop down to about 3 episodes a week through the winter, and then we'll ramp back up before spring training back to 5 episodes a week. On today's show, Sam Blum of The Athletic spoke with pitching coach Barry Enright and new assistant pitching coach Sal Fasano, who, historically has been a catcher. He's a World Series champion with the Angels, Mike, which is kind of funny, even though I think it was 2 games that he played. But he got the ring, so that's all that matters. Speaking of Sal's, have you ever been to Fat Sal's in Los Angeles?
No.
Oh, I gotta take you there. I think there's multiple locations. I know the one that I know of actually caught on fire the other day. But if you're listening to the show or you're watching and you've never been to Fat Sal's, you got to go. Just the most ridiculous, absurd sandwiches of your life, where it's 2,000 calories in a sandwich. Totally worth it. So
I think we're coming your way soon, so that maybe we should make a plan to do that.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah. So Sal Fasano has got me thinking about Fat Sal's. He was asked how that he will fix the Halo strike throwing issues. Yeah. But first, Mike, let's talk about why do the Angels need this additional help with their pitching? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, they weren't effective as a pitching staff, starting specifically. The bullpen was better in the second half, but as a pitching staff overall, they just weren't good in 2024. They ranked 26th in ERA with a 4.56 ERA total, 29th in walks, 601. The only team ahead of them was the historically awful Chicago White Sox, and they were 28th in home runs allowed. Lots of home runs. We saw that often. We saw that with the starters. We also saw that with the bullpen. Barry Enright worked to include these pitchers to figure out how to throw first strikes. He wanted them to have that as a strategy coming into 2024, but we often saw the Angels do the opposite. They were George Costanza and did the opposite. Right. Angels starters, Johnny, were dead last in first pitch strikes in 2024 at 60.6%. The league average was 61.3. Here's where their starting 5 ranked. Jose Soriano, 63.5%. Tyler Anderson, 62.2%. So they were better than league average. And then Reed Detmers, 61.6, just barely above league average. Yeah. The numbers with Reed Detmers, though, can be very deceiving, right? Because he may have thrown a first pitch strike, but then he was up maybe 0-2, then it was 3-2, and then he walked somebody. Right. He did a lot of that,
or
right?
Double or triple or whatever.
And then these numbers, these numbers are not going to surprise you at all. Patrick Sandoval, 55.3% when he did start last season, and then Griffin Canning, 53.4%.
Yeah, second part of the strategy was trying to get quality swings and misses. So get the guys at the plate to whiff on different things. So Barry Enright used an emphasis on their secondary stuff. Wanted the pitchers to set up the hitters and then, get the pitchers to take their best pitch and induce swings and misses. And the Angels struggled there too, because according to Enright, they would either focus on generating swings and misses, or they would focus on strike throwing early in the counts, but most starters struggled with doing both. So it was, hey, here's 1A and then 1B and then do 2. And it was like, what do I do first? 2, 1B, 1A, and juggling plates in the air. So when they tried to do both, Enright said it would lead to pitchers trying to be too fine. And we definitely saw that as well.
Yeah. So in order to correct the issues, they approached it in 2 ways. First, they want to emphasize a first strike approach in preparation. Also, this is what they did last season. They had the pitchers face themselves using technology. We actually did a whole show on that, and it was to help them understand how to fool batters with their spin on the pitches that they're throwing. Now, Jose Soriano, really grew from this practice. He actually, after he was finished, I knew my pitches were good, but when I faced myself, I found out they're really good. And so I have to trust my stuff more, and I got to trust my stuff now. Detmers and Canning said the technique helped them to better understand how their spin can fool a batter. But Johnny, with those two, the results just didn't follow, did they?
No, they definitely haven't. And here's something that we've discussed, but we wanted to share one more time, and that's Kyle Hendricks, Mike. His first pitch strike percentage last season, 68.4%. The highest first pitch strike percentage for free agent pitchers this offseason belonged to Nick Pivetta, who had the 8th best first pitch strike percentage at 68.6%. And so he's still out there as of this recording, a free agent. The Angels emphasize first pitch strikes, but they finished second to last in that category. Is that on the players or is it on the coaching? What do you say?
There's 2 layers, I think, to this answer. One is a story, and then one is some facts. So let me give you a quick story. I have an everydayer that's a good friend. You know him too. He is a high school baseball coach, and he's focusing on the pitching staff right now with high school baseball players. So keep that in mind. Still developing, still growing. One of the conversations that we have had in regards to the Angels' first pitch strikes and the pitches they're throwing has to do with what he's doing with his high school boys. He said they're really focused when he took over this year. They're really focused on spin and they're really focused on speed. Those are the 2 things that they're really focused on. He said the problem, though, is that they don't have a secondary pitch. If they do have a secondary pitch, it's not very effective. And he told these boys, and it was funny to hear him because he has a dry sense of humor, very, very fun guy to be around. But his sell on this was so funny. He was like, hey, boys, you're not going to fool anybody with a 76-mile-an-hour fastball. Like you're not fooling anybody with that, right?
Right. Very
Very dry sell of it. It was hilarious. And he's right. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think for these Angel pitchers, specifically the Cannings, Sandovals, Detmers, and a few others, it just seemed like they had the strategy, but they couldn't execute the strategy. And so you can emphasize. But if you're unwilling to do it or you don't know how to do it, then that's a problem. If they don't know how to do it, then I think coaching can come along and help you in that. But Enright can't come out and pitch for you. Enright can't come out and do that for you.
I don't know. He could. He's a former Angels reliever. We might need him to get back out there. No, I'm just kidding.
The truth is that these guys need to actually perform. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you don't see Canning around anymore and you don't see Sandoval around anymore. Doesn't mean that they can't figure it out. But I think that the Angels are at a place now with somebody like Barry Enright, and I'm giving him high praise because I think he deserves it. I think that he is somebody that has earned it. And I would love to see what year 2 looks like for this team, specifically with our pitching staff. But for somebody like Barry Enright to come in and say, here's the strategy, and then have the guys not do that, that I think is more on the players than it is on the coaches, because we just showed the stats for Jose Soriano and the stats for Tyler Anderson. They were throwing first pitch strikes above league average. So it's possible. And Soriano is somebody who, after that pitching system, watching himself pitch and trying to hit himself, he realized, man, I'm actually a pretty good pitcher. I got to trust my stuff. And that's what I think it really boils down to. You'll hear Gooby say this on the TV side all the time. He's just got to trust his stuff. And I think that that's the biggest issue with former Angels or current Angels that have been around for a while. They just don't trust their stuff. And I don't know how you fix that as a coach, John. Quite honestly, I don't know how much you need to just say, trust your stuff, and then go out there and, hey, if you fail, that's okay because you're learning, all of those things. At some point, that pitcher has to be able to do what we've asked that pitcher to do, right?
Right, yeah. Remember that episode of, I know you're a big fan of Andy Griffith's show, and then they fake Barney's voice in the choir, and he thinks he has this deep, powerful voice. Everyone's like, Andy Griffith's show?
Nice pull.
They need to get Mike Trout in the box and be like, oh my gosh, Detmers, you you struck me out. I can't even hit that. That's what they need to do. But you know what I took away from Sam Blum's article, Mike, and I posted this the day that it came out, was, imagine hearing from your pitching coach some accountability in the sense that, hey, you know what? Last year we emphasized this. We didn't live up to those expectations that we gave the starting pitchers. So we're going to have to revisit that. We're going to have to do our best to teach them this, teach them that. Let's add some first pitch strike throwers to this rotation. Yes. All of that was, I think you always say salve to the soul, right? Yeah, it was, hey, somebody took accountability for something not being accomplished last year. Something that seems simple in theory, but until you're actually on a mound trying to get it done, it might be a whole different animal. But I was very pleased to see some accountability from Barry Enright in recognizing that the Angels didn't do what they wanted them to do last year. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to have to take a more individualized approach with these guys. That's less emphasized on a whole system thing and help them get to where we need them to be. Also, Mike, it's the inmates have been running the asylum before Barry Enright and Ron Washington and all those guys came through. And I mean that because there was no plan. There was no approach, hitting or pitching, right? Until we had Marcus Timms, we didn't know what Jeremy Reed's hitting approach at the plate was. And with Matt Wise, we never heard from Matt Wise, so we don't know what the pitching approach was. All we ever heard from Matt Wise was that they tried to turn Reed Detmers into a ground ball pitcher.
Right.
And nerd John Frisch from Super Halo Bros and Locked On Angels can see that the stats don't really agree with that, Matt Wise. That certainly seems a little unwise.
And Reed had to figure out, maybe if I throw the pitch this way while he's sitting in the dugout,
right?
That is what he had to do. So I get there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with what system they were in prior to this.
Yeah, or lack thereof when it comes to a system. Absolutely. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on Locked On Angels, how is Sal Fasano planning to help Barry Enright solve the first pitch strike issue for the Halos in 2025? We're going to get to all of that coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And if you're a regular customer, just open up the app and you'll see everything that you need right on the same page with all of the live stats, the play-by-play. And then if you get like a stirring in the middle of a game and you're like, hey, I think I'm going to bet on this, you can do that and turn it into big winnings for you. They want you to be a really smart bettor on FanDuel. Just visit their website, FanDuel.com. You join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, John. Never waste a hunch. And make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Mike, Sal Fasano, again, former Halo, great catcher, nothing but praise from guys like Eric Kratz and AJ Przinsky on foul territory. So a really good addition. And in fact, I've seen a lot of former big leaguers, MLB Network hosts, all praising what the Angels have done, not just free agent wise, but the Sal Fasano hire was something that they were praising as well. So we shared the problem. So how are the Halos going to fix the problem? It comes down to Sal Fasano. He worked with the Braves last season, and as someone Perry knows really well, he was a member of the 2002 World Series team. And again, a short stint, but still counts.
Still counts. He's still a champ.
That's right. Now, according to Perry Manassi, and Sal Fasano was coming back in to be a jack of all trades on the team's coaching staff. He said that Sal's going to work closely with the head of game planning, and he'll also work with catchers in the context of how they work with the pitchers. He also said that he'll be front-facing with the pitchers themselves. Sal also said he expects to communicate with catchers and pitchers in game, and that he will work directly with the team's analytics department that we're just now finding out that they have, right, Mike? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. It seems like that, but it's nice to know that they actually have some good technology and some good background things.
It's Ed with a computer in the back room, in the broom closet. Yeah.
Yeah. You got Wi-Fi? All right, Ed, what do we got?
Wi-Fi's out. Got a hotspot.
Right. Fasano was asked about like what he specifically can do. And he said he believes that he can help simplify things for pitchers and take some of the pressure off of their battery mates. We know that Logan O'Hoppe took a lot of accountability last year for, I called the wrong pitch. That wasn't the right pitch in that moment. And so Sal believes that he can help Logan O'Hoppe, Travis d'Arnaud, but also help these pitchers simplify things, take the pressure off, probably help them to take that step to trust their stuff. I love this strategy. I love that they're actually doing something to improve upon what they did last year. Specifically, he said he wants to help Enright to create more individualized messages and strategies for each pitcher. You mentioned that in the first segment. In particular, for those in the bullpen, which is interesting because those guys obviously are pitching, once or twice and then taking a break, and then they're back again, maybe 3 games in a row. And so he wants to make sure that they have the strategies and there's an individualized message for the pitches that they're throwing. He believes, Sal Fasano said, that he can help bridge the gap between mound work, training room, and weight room. John, I think that was the biggest highlight from the article as I read through it, because that seems to be the tension with the Angels the last few years. They talk about all the stuff they're working on behind the scenes, but then it never seems to translate on the field, at least with the starting staff. Mm-hmm. Oh man, Reed Detmers looked fantastic this week as he was working through the game plan. And then he goes out there in 4 innings and 6 runs and 7 hits, right? Yeah. And one of the things that we talked about in the first segment was he was, I think, not a victim, but somebody who fell into the mentality of trying to be too fine, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the thing, bridging that gap between what you're doing behind the scenes and then actually executing it out on the field. That's something that Sal said is going to take more manpower, and he's going to be more hands-on.
Love that.
With that. Enright and Fasano also felt like the pitchers were chasing swing and miss more, and they never established the command that necessitates generating swing and miss. Sal said it's just getting those guys to get into an attack mode, getting the catchers not to be paranoid of, oh my gosh, this is the guy's hot spot. I've got to be careful going after it. And it's also getting those guys to understand how to get to the soft zones of the hitters, still within the strengths of our pitchers. So again, not necessarily, being afraid of the hot zone in the strike zone where a guy typically crushes things. It's going where you need to go to accomplish what you need to get done. And that might be a slider that starts in their hot zone and drifts out of the strike zone. And they think it's something spicy to sit on and hit, and then it tails away from them. I think that when you're pitching in avoidance of rather than attacking, I think that's kind of what Sal is saying there.
That's actually really good. That's a good, I think, analogy of the Angels, is that they were trying to avoid the bats. They were trying to avoid the hot spots. They were trying to avoid a big inning instead of attacking the guy and saying, hey, here's my best stuff. Go after it.
And part of deception is, I'm going to crush this ball. And then all of a sudden it's down around your ankles.
Yep.
That's deception. Right. And so it's just like, let's get that very basic fact in, drilled into these pitchers' heads. And I think that somebody like Kyle Hendricks is going to be really helpful to the young guys in the rotation when it comes to that.
I agree. Now, here's an interesting note. Somebody that you and I were intrigued by, that when he came into the Angels, he was former assistant pitching coach Bill Hessel. He actually left to be a part of the Marlins director of pitching.
Yeah.
Hessel was considered the last bastion of the old pitching regime, right? And so
I thought that was a funny way to put it because he's only been around 2 years, and he was a Perry Manasian hire, and he's from Driveline. So maybe the Angels got a little too advanced too quickly with hiring Driveline people, because there have been, I think about 3 Driveline hires, and 2 of them, including Hessel, are no longer part of the organization. So, Enright must have felt like going in a different direction, but at least somebody went in a direction, I guess you could say. He says he feels like he has a team of coaches who will have continuity in their messaging. And
that's an interesting thought, right?
Yeah.
Like there wasn't, or there was a language barrier baseball wise, that as they're communicating to these young pitchers what they want to achieve, even from minor leagues to major leagues, I can see that maybe there was a tension between like, hey, what are we emphasizing here versus what are we emphasizing here? Or what are we emphasizing with this particular pitcher versus what we're emphasizing when he actually gets to the major league level?
Well, I know you were joking about our friend and the high school team that he coaches, but Mike, Jared Weaver was down at Instructs with the young pitchers as well, and they're all obsessed with spin and velo. My dang chiropractor, his son pitches for USC, and he knows all of his teammates are obsessed with spin and velo. And what do they emphasize at Driveline? Well, and this is not a knock on Driveline, because I think they're really helpful, but they emphasize how to get the most velocity that you can, how to get the best spin that you can. That's a very oversimplification of what they do, but part of the results that they get out of people is they help fix pitchers' spin rate, movement, velocity, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes perhaps these guys get a little, not Bill Hessel himself or Driveline, but the pitchers themselves get a little too obsessed with that, and that's why they're chasing swing and miss rather than just trusting their stuff.
Doesn't this sound like, after reading this article, doesn't it sound like Enright and Fasano are 2 guys that are going to really emphasize, hey, let's throw some strikes first, right? Let's throw some strikes, and then we're going to deceive the guys, and then we're going to throw in their cold zone, and then we're going to attack them. But let's throw some strikes first. Enright talked a lot about that. There's going to be some adjusting, some refining with this new coaching staff. He said Fasano, as an addition to this staff, is going to create a culture that far exceeds what they did in 2024. He said adding Sal and being able to take some things, delegate some things in these areas, I think Sal will do a heck of a job sprinkling in his personality and experience in every one of these areas. Johnny, something that Todd Frazier said on Foul Territory, as him and Eric Kratz and others were talking about the Angels, is Todd Frazier said it really is Atlanta Braves West, because they're taking a lot of that culture and they're infusing it in the Angel culture right now, aren't they?
Well, yeah, if you're going to model yourself after somebody, I don't think the Braves are the worst choice out there to do that. But also, Perry Manasian has seen the way the Braves built a culture. And, Ron Washington wasn't the manager, but he was the third base coach. And he's had a lasting impression on everybody he's ever worked with in his entire life. And I was responding to a comment the other day. Freddie Freeman still does the Washington drills before each game. And, he's years away from being coached by Ron Washington. And so it just shows that when you get the right pieces in place and you actually are building a culture somewhere, that it leads to a really good thing.
Now, the one thing that I would say is that the Angels are 5 years, 7 years behind the Braves currently.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I say that because, Sal Fasano left, and of course Ron Washington left. And I think that there is a time, a season for every purpose, right? The as the old song goes. But the truth is that I think what Wash brings, Sal Fasano brings, is what the Braves needed in that time with some of their young players. Now that they're winning, you almost need a new mind and a new strategy, because you've reached this echelon of who you are as a team. And now these guys who can get you there aren't the guys that can get you here. And so I think that that's what the Angels are really taking from the Braves, is they're taking what got them to where they are. They're taking those guys, that philosophy and that culture, and they're infusing it in Anaheim right now.
Yeah, it's definitely going to need to be passed on to whoever the next manager might be for the Angels. And to be fair, like Ron Washington might not be around to see the success of the Angels, but it will certainly be built upon what him and his coaching staff have established since they were able to come on.
As we talk about all of this, the big question is, sounds good. Glad that they have a strategy. Glad there's accountability.
Right.
But will things change? Right?
Yeah.
like that's the thing. I think if we could speak on behalf of all Angel fans, I think all Angel fans are wondering, will things change? Will we start to see performance on the field? Because there's always been lots of conversations around this team over the last 10 years. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. Here's this guy's coming in. Hey, Brad Osmus is coming in and he's going to do this and he's going to work well here. And all of that stuff has never translated to a competitive team that's playing really well, that looks like they know what they're doing when they're out there. The pitchers feel like they know what they're doing when they're out there. They don't feel lost. Doesn't mean you're not going to lose. Doesn't mean you're not going to give up the home run. Doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means like, I'm confident in this guy on the mound. I'm confident in this person coming in and trying to get this out in the 7th inning. I'm confident in this guy getting the out in the 9th inning to close the game. So the big question is, will this bring any sort of change, John? And I would love your thoughts as to if you think we'll start to see that beginning in 2025.
Yeah, I think that we will start to see the change. I think that what fails a lot of baseball fans is that baseball is not an overnight sport. It takes progress. It takes time. And you've seen what the Angels were able to do in that first season with Ron Washington and no superstars. It was basically our young core, carrying the weight of the team all season long. And you saw the results of that. You saw Zach Neto hit 25 home runs, still 23 bags, have his best season. You saw Logan O'Hoppe catch probably too many games, but still hit 20 home runs. You saw Joe Adell go from the worst outfielder, according to fan opinion, and like get that guy off the team, to being a Gold Glove finalist in right field. So there were marginal, I wouldn't even say marginal. That's pretty significant when you go from, all the grief that Joe Adell's been given over the last 3 years to being a Gold Glove finalist and actually having the stats behind you to say that, yeah, you were a pretty dang good right fielder. Oh, and also he hit, 20 home runs as well. Yep. So it's just like, at the end of the day, the improvements that this team is making, it starts somewhere, and it started last year. And for me, Mike, I know you mentioned Osmus and you mentioned Madden and you mentioned all this stuff, but it's all just fluff. It was all a lot of, here's what we're trying to do. And, maybe if we get a new manager, we can do this, we can do that. The biggest mistake they ever made was taking this team away from Mike Scioscia, and not when he, his contract was up. I'm talking back when Jerry DiPoto came on as the GM, and they tried to be more forward thinking. They tried to get more analytical stuff. They tried to do this. They tried to do that. But at the end of the day, all the stuff that you implement in your organization has to be in service of the visionary of your team. And it just so happens the visionary of your team is the manager, right? And I think they're finally trusting somebody like Ron Washington to be that visionary, because his philosophy doesn't stop at the major league level. It's spoken about all the way through all the minor leagues. And so finally, I know it's only year 2, but at least that this coaching staff, there's been some consistency. They're adding Sal Fasano instead of firing Barry Enright, because they recognize the mistakes that were there, or the issues that were there, or the shortcomings that were there. And who could really help with this? Sal Fasano. Let's get a guy who can take the know-how from the locker room out onto the mound and make sure the pitchers and catchers can do that as well. So even though it feels like maybe 10 years too late, this is the first time. And I know we had several years of Joe Madden, and I know we had several years of Billy Epler. I know all that, but this is the first time that real consistency is happening. It feels real. And I think that's where I'm at with all of this.
Yeah. And the bigger question is, do they have the players to actually make this happen, which I would say they do. And here's why. Because they have a Travis d'Arnaud who knows what's being asked of him. They have a Kyle Hendricks who knows what's being asked of him. Are they the sexiest players? Are they the best player? They're not. And that's why the Angels can't just sit and go, well, we got these back of the roster guys to fill in and help be guys that understand this philosophy. They need guys at the top of the roster to do the same thing. And that's why Kikuchi is important and why I think another signing would be really important. And then they also have the young guys that are buying into the Ron Washington philosophy. And I love that you brought them up, because the last thing that I want to say here is, and it really doesn't have anything to do with Sal, but it has a lot to do with these players, is they did improve. These players did improve. Mm-hmm. And so if there's a narrative out there for some of our everydayers and some of the Angels fans that there was no improvement at all, that's because you're looking at the record. You're looking at the overall record. And yeah, it was a crappy year overall record-wise. But these players improved defensively. These players improved offensively. These players are better. And that year is going to really flex its power this year in 2025.
Yeah. And to your point, last point, they got rid of the players who couldn't do it. And I think that we see that, unfortunately, no knock, but Sandy, Canning, maybe even Matt Thaiss, right? Yeah. Like, obviously that was not important enough to try to fix or keep around. I think that's also a positive in the right direction as well.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. Going to bring you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you up to date on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comment section. We love interacting with you there. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you help us out that way as well. Mike, what do we have on deck for, Thursday show? Let's go.
Perry Minasian admitted a new strategic change to his offseason approach with free agents, and we're going to share that change tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, put us on tomorrow morning while you're prepping the meals and getting ready for all the family to come over. All right, until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.